Yes, this is my second book that I've reviewed from Bret, Easton, Ellis. I reviewed White last week, which I might redo that one because I didn't really care for it. I was kind of tired, and I thought maybe being tired was good because I talked slower, but then I'm like, maybe I'm not grasping the right energy that I'm trying to get out of how much I really like that book. So, I don't know. Stay tuned. Maybe, maybe not. Anyways, to the Shards. Look at this cover, huh? They got some blood splatter, got a back of a guy's neck, back, whatever. What's really cute is you get I think that's like Bret Easton Ellis's, God, sorry, I have a terrible camera, like high school photo. That's kind of cool. Yeah, this book's great. It's about 600 pages. I read it pretty quickly. I read this actually like about a month or two ago. It's what made me want to read The Shining, just because Bret Easton Ellis talks about it quite fondly in this book. I'm like, I gotta read The Shining now that he's talked so much about it. So yes, I kind of delayed this review, but I do think it's a really good book. I feel like I am scattered already. See, this is why I was recording my last video kind of tired, because my thoughts were, I was just so defeated at that point that I would just kind of get my thoughts together. Okay, first I'm just saying, so yeah, this was published in 2023, I thought so. So I believe this is the most recent book that Bret Easton Ellis has published. I remember like anticipating it to come out, and then I totally forgot about it, and then I picked it up over the summer and read it. It's quite thick. It's good. I really liked this book. I read all of his books out of order, so I should state that right away. I've read most of his books. I think there might be two that I haven't read yet. But I really have enjoyed this one. What's unique about this book is Bret Easton Ellis is the main character, which I really liked. He's 18 years old. It's 1981 again. He's living, I think, like in a suburb just outside Los Angeles, goes to some fancy prep school with his fancy, rich, elite friends, and kind of like this fancy, elite lives they're living as basically like there's kids transitioning into adults. So it's a lot of like, I kind of like think of Skins, if anyone's familiar with Skins. Like you have these kids who are teenagers who are just handling really adult themes, yet, sex, drugs, and rock and roll is all about it. And that's kind of how I feel like all of Bret Easton Ellis' books are kind of like. Like there's a lot of sex, drugs. There's always music, so you could say rock and roll. And there's always some element of violence and blood and guts, for sure, which never disappoints. So yes, the blood on the cover here, it's not just there for decoration. There's totally blood and guts in this. Okay, so the book, this is Bret Easton Ellis is the main character, and it starts off as him, like, I think, probably in his 50s at this point, like in his 50s, and he's reflecting on this horrible thing that happened when he was a senior in high school, and this crazy serial killer rampage, and it was so frightening and horrific that, he passed, or he had a heart attack, or had some kind of seizure, or whatever. He had some, like, medical event happen, and he couldn't write it, and he kept waiting when the right times to write it, and then he reflects on his childhood a little bit more. You get to learn more about him, and that's the thing. Like, this book, I think, really mirrors more consciously, like, his self as a person, like, the real things that he actually enjoyed and, like, had as a child, as a kid growing up, meets, like, a whole fictitious story. Like, there was a serial killer. Kids went missing around this time, growing up in the 70s and 80s. We've all watched, America's Most Wanted and Dateline and all that stuff. At least I did as a kid. I don't know about you. And so there's like a lot of presence of that. So it's definitely inspired by true things, like especially like heavy cult groups that were causing chaos throughout Los Angeles and beyond. So there's definitely some truths there that inspired this story, which was really interesting. So Bret Easton Ellis goes back in time to this event that happened, and he also talks himself as a writer and like kind of what inspired him, and he talks about Stephen King and how I just like to imagine him as a 7-year-old reading The Shining over and over and over again, because he talks about it. He's like, I just like read it, and then when Kubrick was making his film, he's like, I followed that more closely than my own books being made into films. Like, there was something about The Shining he was so fascinated with. He shares his interest in, at this time when he was 18, he started writing Less Than Zero, which is his first first published book. I believe it came out in 1985. And so, like, you know, he talks about that as he was 18, like starting to work on the outline and rough draft of Less Than Zero, and also his love for films and going to all these films and scheduling times and all this stuff. So I thought that was really cool. You get a chance to learn more about the author in like a true way, but he takes you into this realish but fake reality of kind of this whole murder, serial killing thing that does go on his senior year. So I really like that. What I also really liked about this book, it was unusual, is so Bret Easton Ellis, I mean, it's known that he is a gay man, okay? And talking about his like sexual experiences as an 18-year-old, like he had this very passionate physical relationship with this one guy at his school. And he, after a while, comes to terms with like, I think I may have been in love with him. And I just like love like how you're in his mind and how he perceives some of these like encounters he has with like other guys. At first he thought he was like more bi, but I would say by the time he's a senior, he's pretty much like, I'm not into girls. Like, he finds them beautiful. He's dating one, Debbie Schaefer, who's like one of the most popular girls in his school. And he talks about kind of like the superficiality of it all. He's dating this woman because, you know, of her friends, and it makes him look a certain way. Otherwise he would just be some random dude who went to this school that meant nothing. And so he does reflect on the superficiality of this and the image he's having, or the image he wants to present to everybody that makes him feel better about himself, even though it's totally fictitious. It's not true. He's not attracted to Debbie. Like, it's just interesting how he went along with it. But also, like, you know, being a gay teen in the early 80s, but also like talking about older, because there's a few older people. I don't want to give everything away in this book, but there's like, you know, older people who, like actually her dad is married, but obvious, like, I guess it's very obvious, like he's gay. Bret picks up on it, and you'll see why he picks up on it. And it's just interesting, like kind of like, I guess the early days of like coming out, and where people were kind of quiet and in the closet, and how they chose to maneuver around it, I guess you could say. So that was interesting. It really was. I don't think I've ever read anything about like the male perspective, especially like in adolescence, and how they perceive these, like, again, these very adult themes, especially when it comes to like these very intimate physical relationships. I thought that was a very interesting thing too, that I have not experienced in literature or in a Bret Easton Ellis book. Even though I know Glamorama, he kind of explores like this bisexuality part of it. I mean, there's definitely a theme that Bret Easton Ellis likes to incorporate. Like, for some reason, like there's definitely always gonna be like some sexually charged aspect to his books, and this was just a different perspective that I haven't seen yet in his books. Sorry, this is like all flapping around. So that was they're very interesting. And there were times like it was like sweet, and like his nervousness, and he like finds this one guy super attractive, and the guy knows that Bret Easton Ellis is basically like kind of, I want to say, a fraud, because this guy, his name's Ryan, and I can't remember his last name in it, but he's like Bret Easton Ellis is super into him. They go to school together. They both have, you know, hooked up a bit, and then the guy just knows, like, dude, you're totally a fraud. Like, how's your girlfriend? Like, all this stuff. And it's just like kind of very interesting, or how nervous Bret gets around him. And I thought it was, you know, call me a sap or a sucker about it. Like, I just thought it was kind of sweet, and just like, oh my God, what a window into someone's soul and thoughts and feelings. And maybe he felt that way in high school, as he kind of came into himself. And, you know, definitely like, even like Less Than Zero, or The Rules of Attraction, you kind of get some, I think, mirroring of Bret Easton Ellis and how he thought of like sexuality, and like dabbling and figuring out complicated things. I think it's all complicated. I think, you know, we're all figuring that shit out still, no matter how old you are. Okay. So, but as this all is going on, you know, there's this murder, serial killings going on. First, it starts out with these younger girls They don't go to his school per se, but they're like in the same age group, in the same area, like in like Southern California area, and they like these weird things happening, like their pets go missing, these mysterious phone calls are happening, these girls go missing, and later on they're found, and I think some of them are actually dismembered. And then at the same time, going with that, paralleling that, is also this like cult is going around terrorizing, and it could be this cult is actually doing these things, it's just not very sure. Serial killer, they call them the Prowler. Bret Easton Ellis becomes obsessed with this story, and he keeps following it, and he even like reflects like, I feel like I'm the only one who's like concerned about this and worried about this and knows what's happening, and no one else really says anything about it. And it kind of becomes this paranoia. There's a new kid who starts the senior year of school, Robert Mallory, and Bret Easton Ellis becomes obsessed with Robert Mallory and hates him, but also finds him so attractive, but like hates him at the same time. Like such a disgust, but like hates that he finds him so attractive. And he starts to think that this guy is probably the serial killer too. And it just becomes this whole paranoia. Bret Easton Ellis thinks of himself as a writer and kind of takes on an interesting role and perspective in these like connecting these crazy murders to this new kid who comes to his school who he's just is so highly suspicious of, and like hates his friends for loving this guy. And yeah, I don't want to go away too much more. I thought it was really good. I thought it was really interesting. I mean, it was a page turner. I was like, what is this? What is this? And I thought this book just like had so many great different layers that were just really well put together. Like there's a lot of different things happening, and then all of a sudden they overlap and come together. Don't worry, like Bret Easton Ellis delivers on this one. It is a very interesting story. I felt like I got to know the author in an interesting way. And I like how he made these like young adolescents confronting these really big, heavy, like adult things in an interesting way. I mean, these are all rich kids, you know, it's very superficial. Like again, in Bret Easton Ellis fashion, the superficiality of it, and the aesthetics of everything, you know, naming off like brand names of the clothing they're wearing, how everyone looks, like everyone looks so cool, and the music that's playing in the background, and also like the physical intimate relationships he's having. And it's just a really interesting storyline. I thought this book delivered. I'm very pleased with it. I recommend it, loved it. Would I read it again? Maybe I would. I got some other books I want to read first, but yeah. Anyways, check it out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. All right. Bye.